Right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another community call, ResearchHub. A few items on the agenda, and the first one is a grant agreement for the editor program. Patrick, take it away.
Yeah, so just as a little bit of context here, when we started the editor program, the idea was to kind of like float the concept, see if we got any interest, and like take it from there, depending on if people were interested or not. I think like the response has been incredible so far. And so we see this as being like a powerful way to be able to scale up Research Hub kind of as we grow and our market cap grows and we're able to sort of like support more editors in different hubs. So as you all may have noticed, like the first month, there's some like technical difficulties to work through. One of those is kind of like the legal and tax situation around how like RSC payments would work for something like this. So we went to our attorneys and had a grant agreement drafted up that basically like formally papers the like relationship for the editors of Research Hub. And so I've run this agreement past Anton and Jeff to get their feedback. But the idea here is that we'll just have like a tax. It's not necessarily a tax document, but it's kind of like a contract for a grant, essentially, that describes like the services that Research Hub gets in return, which is basically what we've been doing in the editor program so far. So if anybody has any better ideas, let me know. But I was thinking once we have this finalized, which should be in the next like day or two, we just send it out via DocuSign and get everybody to sign it that way. But I know Anton and Jeff have been the only like community members who have taken a look at the copy so far. So you guys like feel free to share your thoughts if you'd like. And then when like the actual finalized copy comes back, if anybody has any questions, you can let me know. But yeah, it's pretty straightforward. So I guess yeah, is DocuSign a good way to go about like getting everybody to sign it? And then do Anton or Jeff have any thoughts on like the actual like terms of the grant agreement?
Yeah, I think DocuSign is great, and yeah, when I wrote it over, I think it's good to have a little bit of formality, obviously, to the whole program, and I think both ends of both parties on that would really appreciate it. So yeah, nothing that was like weird or concerning on the document, so it looked great.
Yeah, same here, but I'm not exactly an expert on legal language, so curious to see what everyone else thinks when you get the chance to read it.
Yeah, totally. It's supposed to be like pretty neutral in general, just to formalize things. And then another piece of this is that the RSC would be recognized as income. So essentially, like the like editors would be viewed as contractors, and you all would have to independently report the RSC as income. Um, the exact mechanism of this, I think, is still like being worked out in the contract because it does matter if the price is really what Uniswap says or kind of what we're distinguishing with the price floor. That'll matter for like tax purposes. So still more to kind of like iron out there, but we should have like the document ready to sign and like the finalized information within the next day or two. Yeah, Nicholas.
Nicholas?
Yeah, since you mentioned that the we would have to like declare the RSC as contractors, is that a 1099 form or what kind of form is that?
Yeah, I believe it's a 1099. So we should issue that to you, I'm pretty sure. But I'll have like more details on like the tax reporting stuff after we get the contract finalized.
Cool, thanks.
Lynn?
Yeah, also in terms of like reporting it as income, do we expect by like, next tax season when, those of us who joined in January, like, do we expect to be able to buy and sell RSC? Because like, if we're getting taxed on all that as income, but don't have any way of actually like liquidating it, that could be a problem.
Totally. Yeah, it's a great point. So, it's hard to speak in absolutes, but I would assume in 12 months that there would be enough liquidity where you'd be able to help cover the tax bill from it. Does anybody else have any thoughts or questions before we move on? Cool. guess
Simon?
Yeah, hey, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
Do you have to report it even if you don't convert it to USD?
I am not 100% sure. I don't want to give like formalized tax advice. Maybe we could have like an accountant actually show up to a community call and answer everybody's questions, because I'm sure there are tons of different questions.
Yeah, that would be great, actually, because I have a few more that maybe somebody would need to answer who knows more about it.
Yeah, I feel uncomfortable providing like that kind of advice because I don't know for sure, and it is important. And we can, so at some point, once we'll get this contract finalized, I'll ask our lawyers kind of what they think the best way of going about communicating tax information is, and we'll have the tax part figured out within the next 4 weeks, hopefully with somebody coming to speak and answer questions. Is that okay with everybody?
Yeah, thank you.
Cool. Yeah, so if there aren't any other questions on this piece, I guess the what's next, Anton?
So next up, we have demo of the early version of the peer review.
Cool. I guess if Kobe's on the call, do you want to walk through design so far? And just so everybody knows, just context here, this is kind of like a very first design of what peer review could look like on ResearchHub. And so, yeah, we want you to be like as critical as possible here. Just thinking of like the practicalities of not only the design, like the UI, but also like recruiting peer reviewers. Like, what's the best way to do this that like keeps everybody incentivized, can be like minimize the bias, and also actually be reasonable, to put on as a responsibility for peer reviewers or editors.
Yeah, yeah. As Patrick mentioned, it's very early designs, and I think, in my opinion and the opinion of the whole team, and probably likely in your opinion, like this feature is going to be like super instrumental to the success of ResearchHub. So we would really appreciate some critical feedback on it, like critically constructive feedback. Yeah, so first draft, but very important to get some feedback. Let me share my screen. 1 second. Okay, can you guys do you all see my notes?
Yep.
You see the Figma?
Yeah. Okay. So is it big enough? Maybe I'll make it a little bigger. Yeah. So this is like the paper page, right? So on this paper page, you'll notice on the right side, there's going to be a section for, actually, sorry, this is not the right thing I wanted to show you. Yeah, here you go. So there's going to be like a section on the right side that says request a review. Now clicking on this, it's going to show up on the paper, like probably on the right side, maybe some other place, but clicking on it will open up a modal that will ask you to select a reviewer. So there's going to be like, you can type a user's name or like select from a drop down, that's still on the fence. But once you select a reviewer, then you click the send request button and they will be notified that a review was requested from them. Now that's one way of doing things. Another approach that we discussed earlier in the call is to convert this process into more of a bounty process. So where like rather than selecting like specific people, what you would do is to initiate this review process, you would put up some RSC as a bounty, and basically like the intention of it is like getting expert reviewers, like people that are in the field that can actually do like a legit peer review, to go and conduct the peer review. So that's another way of doing it, and we think that that's probably like a slightly better way, right? But it's up for grabs. So yeah, there's like a few other things I wanted to point out here. The homepage. So at the top right, like the person was like, if we go with the original approach, and it doesn't really matter which approach we go with, we're going to like really leverage the on-site notifications to ask people to do reviews or to notify the submitter of a paper, or maybe the author, that their review on their paper has been completed. So we're going to be doing that. And in addition, we're going to be like updating the homepage so that like first thing is on a paper card. So you don't see it here, but this is like each one of these is like a paper card, right? So on a paper card is going to be like something that indicates that a peer review is requested or that a peer review has been completed. You will be able to see that status somewhere here, and we will likely expose it as a filter as well to get more people in on it. So that's like, yeah, and emails and all that. So that's like one side of the equation, right? The other side of the equation is is really like the actual writing of the review. So we discussed it earlier, and we're like, the one approach that we're thinking about at the moment is kind of like Rotten Tomatoes. I don't know if you're like familiar with what they do, is, but they have audience score, and they have like I think it's called like expert score or something like that, where basically like the audience is like anyone. Like I watch a movie, I can submit a review of like what I think, and then there is the expert reviewers. They can they have more weight on the matter. So we're thinking maybe going with this approach here, where anyone can technically write a review, but expert reviews are displayed differently and weighted differently than the average person making the review. Because, you know, if we want to be like a reputable scientific journal or like compete with these scientific journals, we need to differentiate between the two. And and we think like editors can really help us in finding these experts. So, but that's a topic for another discussion. So basically, on a paper page is going to be the write a review button. Anyone can write a review. And now this page has a bunch of things we are going to collect, but it's probably wrong, or like not wrong, but not correct, rather, because we haven't given this page a lot of thought. So we can talk about it at the end if there is time, but it's going to be like a bunch of information we request from the user, and then there's going to be like some kind of a status. So like, are you approving it? Are you approving it with some reservations, or not approving it? Similarly to yeah, GitHub or something like that. Did anyone have any questions, comments? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so a little bit of context here. I think this is going to be the hardest part, like figuring out exactly what questions we need to ask people that can be translated into a numerical value for easy, like, I guess, communication. But then like, something that can cover, you know, every field of science. So something we'll need a lot of help with is like the exact prompts here and like how they feed into an overall quality score, because it's going to be really hard to do in a way that can apply to like, you know, every field. Sorry, Kobe.
No worries. Thanks for yeah, adding that. Yeah, and like I'm almost done, since like it's preliminary. There isn't much to go here. So you submit the review. So like another thing, and you know, obviously the language here and all that is not finalized, but one important point that we want to make is that both the author and the reviewer will receive RSC, because we really want to promote people submitting their work for peer reviews, and you know, and we want just not to reward just the reviewer, but the author as well. Even if the review, and I think that's on the fence, but one idea is that even if the review is like not positive, like just the fact that the author wanted to put their paper up to be reviewed, there would be like I think worthy of obtaining some RSC. But you know, we can discuss that, because there is like two aspects here, right? There is like the papers that are already published that will get reviewed, and I know Joyce says the terminology here. And then there is the new ELN feature that we're releasing, where people can submit their preprints and manuscripts to be reviewed. So it's like two different layers here. So yeah, I just wanted to make that point real quick. And the final thing I'm going to say before we talk about it and have some questions and things like that is that there's going to be in the profile page would likely add a peer review section of like showing basically all the reviews you added, and yeah, this is going to be radically different, but just a way to manage your reviews and review requests. And actually, there is one other thing I forgot to mention, but let me go up here in the comment section. So we don't have it designed, but yeah, basically what we're going to probably do in the comment section, we're going to, at some point, maybe not for V1, but we will try to merge reviews and comments into like a timeline where we show both of them. And people can look at reviews and can look at comments, and they can even comment on reviews. So it's all going to be in one section. Yeah. So let me pause here. Let's get some. Joyce, did you have anything more to add?
No, that was awesome. Thank you, Kobe. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Does anyone have any questions? I can't see hands raised or anything like that because I'm sharing, but maybe Joyce, you tell me if anyone is raising hands or something like that.
Yeah, I think we got Joey to start off.
Yeah, no, thanks for the presentation. So yeah, I guess kind of speaking a little bit to what you said before, Kobe, like because like to me as a like an author, I think every time I hear peer review, I'm thinking I'm submitting a draft manuscript and it's getting peer reviewed in order to get published. But this, what you're speaking to is like it's already published, and this is kind of like a movie review where I'm actually just reviewing an article. Is that? I'm just trying to get clarification.
Yeah, so I think we're going to do both in a way that's like, retroactively applicable to other papers. So like post-publication peer review, and then also like regular peer review through our ELN feature, where someone could publish a preprint and then we could show peer review and like manuscript revisions, then eventually have like a peer-reviewed, preprint that could then be like peer-reviewed again in like post-review kind of fashion.
Is there thoughts of maybe calling them two different things? Because I think that'd be like, it's actually really confusing already. Like talking to you right now. Could there be like because they are two different things, and it might be helpful to just have them called two different things.
I agree with that. I think it's like necessary even because peer review is such a known like term. We definitely should call it something different.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great point. Yeah, thanks for bringing it up. What do you all think? Like, I know it's like post-publication review is like my understanding of the term, but it's not too catchy. Do you know what we should call it if it's not like a traditional peer review through the ELN, but kind of like a pub peer type review? We can think on it too, and then like post suggestions in the chat later.
So, but what's the point of the post-publication peer review?
So the point is to like give like a rating to papers. So in theory, like there were a bunch of papers that were published about like hydroxychloroquine and COVID, right? Mm-hmm. And there was a big meta-analysis that came out, and people like went into each individual paper and like criticized like its merits. And so ideally what we would like is to have an easily accessible score on every paper. So you could go into that meta-analysis, see the first paper they cited maybe had like a 95 quality score, and then the second one had a 45 quality score, and the third one had a 32 quality score, just to give like immediate context to stuff that already exists.
Yeah, we really want to, I guess Amazon maybe is a bad example, but Amazon crowdsources like a lot of this feedback about like products where like you can look at the product at a glance and get some kind of this metadata. And again, I know it's not a great analogy, but we want to, as Joyce mentioned, this quality score is something that unfortunately we just we can't obtain right now because it doesn't exist, but we're going to introduce it, and that means that we can assign these quality scores to papers that have been already published, if that makes sense.
Nathan?
We're going to have multiple parties do the reviews on these already published papers, or is it just going to? And when you do a bounty, is it going to be multiple parties, or is it no one qualified party?
So we're still figuring out all of the details. The way we're thinking about it right now is anyone would be able to request bounties for these post reviews or whatever we end up calling them. I know that's Anton's idea, so I don't want to steal his terminology. But yeah, in theory, we could build up bounties on certain publications until it's high enough that an expert is like, okay, fine, I'll share my critical opinion of this paper in a formal way. So we can do it that way. We can do it with multiple reviewers earning like portions of the bounties. Maybe the first one gets 40%, the second one gets 30, the last one gets 20 or something. The design space is wide open. So we'll end up building whatever you all think is the best way to go about it. I guess Nathan was next.
Yeah, well, firstly, I'd like to say that the user interface looks great. So thanks a lot for showing us that, because that looks really exciting. I think to me, it sounds like a critical appraisal type approach. And if we're coming up with some kind of score, it's a sort of critical appraisal score. So there are validated structured approaches to doing critical appraisal. So I don't know if you guys are aware of a body called Cochrane, but they endorse a checklist called the CASP checklist. And then there's a CASP checklist for randomized control trials, a CASP checklist for cohort studies, a CASP checklist for basically different study designs, which encourages a really structured approach, question by question, looking at important aspects of each of these study designs. So I think maybe a really, basic framework to start with is follow the CASP checklist, then assign each of those questions a score that they can score them out of, and then aggregate the score, and you get a critical appraisal score. And then we can work on it and build on it as we want to on top of that.
I love it.
That's
That's like exactly what Brian had suggested when he was first talking about the score, was bringing up the Cochrane. So yeah, thanks for bringing up the exact list, because it'll make our product presentation look a lot better. Thanks, Nathan.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you.
I guess Iona.
Yes. Maybe we can differentiate between papers and between sectors, and the experts can suggest what metrics should we review the paper after, because there are different disciplines. Yeah, and also we should integrate the anonymous review. Like as Nathan said, there are like different types of review. For some papers, there's not necessary to review 5 persons or 10 persons. Yeah. So different. Maybe someone last time, I don't know, said that even the PhD students or the master students can come up with ideas how that should be reviewed.
Yeah, definitely. So one of the challenging parts of this is really to have like a quality peer review from an expert. Like you need sort of a third party who can determine like what subfield is being talked about in this paper, and who are the experts in this subfield that would be qualified to review the paper. So the way, and this is probably like a V2 or 3, but the way we're thinking about this long term is we would have like 2 or 3 paid expert reviewer slots on a paper, and then unlimited like casual reviews.
Yeah.
And like casual reviews could be upvoted and downvoted, and then maybe over time someone can build up their expertise to be an expert in a certain like subfield. I really like the idea of having specific peer review forms for each subfield. Like maybe each hub can have their own culture around peer review. I think that's like a really, really cool idea. Like long term, I think we could definitely allow things to sort of like become, each like field to have their own culture within the peer review submission. And then the last part was anonymity. I also think that's very important. If you look at PubPeer, that's kind of how they started. And they're, in my mind, like the leaders when it comes to like how you can use the internet to help like allow for critical review of science papers. So I think it's important. It might not be in the V1. And generally, like the challenge here is like we want to help push people towards openness as much as possible. But then also anonymity is very important because you have to be able to say things that might get you in trouble. So maybe like anonymous reviews aren't eligible for ResearchCoin. Like they should be purely motivated by scientific, discussion or conduct or whatever.
Yeah.
There's lots of thoughts there, but yeah, I think anonymity is a big piece of this, which may not be in the V1, but will be necessary for it to actually do its job. I guess Lynn.
Yeah. So I might have missed this, but so what qualifies somebody to like accept a bounty? Because like, what if you put up a bounty and somebody writes a review and it's like clear that they don't actually know what they're talking about, or clear that they put no effort into it at all?
Yeah. So the idea here is we'll lean on editors. I think it's reasonable to expect that even if an editor is not an expert in the subfield, they'd at least be able to determine whether a peer review is quality or not and deserving of a bounty. And so we can have some guidelines along with that, like to help set it in stone what qualifies for bounty or not. But at the end of the day, I think we'll probably ask the editors to like basically check off like, hey, did this peer review meet the minimum like quality standards? Yes, then the bounty gets paid out or whatever.
Yeah. I have actually a question real quick about the bounty. So as I mentioned, like basically there's going to be a bounty open and someone is going to complete the review is going to get the bounty. Now, what I was thinking about earlier, and I'm not sure, does it make sense for only one person to open a bounty? Can multiple people like basically contribute to a bounty for a peer review? Wanted to get people's thoughts.
So to jump in here, the way that I'm thinking about this is there's a business model here, which is the APC kind of open access business model, where a lot of open access journals, they'll charge like $1,500 for authors to submit their paper. They do like peer review, they help to typeset it, and they do a little distribution. I think it'd be cool if we had a similar system where like bounties are flowing through to peer reviewers. Maybe a certain portion is collected as revenue, but anyone can provide the APC. So like the authors don't have to, maybe like a funder could, maybe if there's a great preprint that you would love to see peer reviewed, you could do it. Like crowdsourced APCs for these reviews, I think would be pretty interesting and take some of the burden off of the publishing author if they can like draw up, buzz around their preprint and convince people to give resources to have it reviewed.
Yeah, it actually gets me thinking about HackerOne, where they get like a bunch of really good hackers find problems with your product. Kind of like, hacking as a service, kind of like peer review as a service. I like that.
Jeff?
Sorry, I wanted to say, first off, I really like that idea, Patrick. The one thing that, and Kobe, thank you for the kind of run through of the whole scheme over here. It was really nice. The one thing that like popped into my head early on was kind of the conflict of interest that could arise where someone's deciding who they would like to review their publication. So if I have an assortment of friends, on ResearchHub, I can just have them, review my posts and give me stellar ratings, and I have this kind of inflated score of myself. And so I'm just wondering maybe how you guys think we could like try to mitigate something like that, or if we steer only towards like the bounty program instead, if that helps that out.
So what I was thinking here is it's kind of like we can lean on editors to help find peer reviewers. So like your friends could come in and review your paper as like casual reviews, where there's like low weight contributions to this overall metric of quality. But then like if the bounty was high enough, the editors would reach out to like subfield experts and be like, hey, there's this much research coin, available if you want to help peer review this paper in your subfield, and then there would be like 2 or 3 of those, which would be heavily weighted, and in theory would be unbiased because they don't know you. There's a degree of separation between who submits the paper and who actually recruits the peer reviewer. Although like now, it could maybe your friends, somebody else here who's an editor, like you could do that. But like in theory, there's like a degree of separation between the editor and the submitter of the content.
Okay, so the idea would be that it could still happen, but it would be weighted significantly less because the highest weighted thing would come from an unbiased person. Okay, cool.
Do you think that's a reasonable approach?
Yeah, I think so. I guess it depends on like how quickly we'd be able to implement like a third party to come in, and like how readily available those types of people would be, or if there'd be like some kind of like big like lag period from when this feature gets integrated until we can do something like that.
I know there's like a pretty big movement around, it's kind of corny, but like the 450 movement or something. There's a bunch of meta scientists who really want peer reviewers to get paid. So I think we could maybe start out with like communities that are trying to support this, like already communities of potential peer reviewers exist, and we can tap into those because they actually want to earn for peer review. So yeah, I think we'll have to maybe be like selective about what content we want to put through the system first. I guess, Anton?
Yeah, I'm trying to piece your comments together, and I'm wondering if it makes sense for, because your initial version you described is kind of like peer-to-peer review, where some people request reviews and they can appoint other people to fulfill those bounties. And I wonder if it makes sense to differentiate them even more, like you said, with them being casual, as opposed to the bigger ones that are, I don't know, maybe we could call them curated, the ones that are either crowdsourced or maybe they come from the ResearchHub grants or something like this, where it wouldn't be from one person to another person, but it would be a more serious and slow process, that's anonymous, where editors would facilitate connecting several not editors but reviewers with, I guess, the author, right? And they would establish the communication, then they would process all the input from the reviewers, and then they would come up with some sort of verdict. So more similar to the traditional publishing system, because I do think it's pretty important to mimicry early on, right? Because if we want to get on the stage close to the the ongoing actual journals, we want to retain this the successful and respected practices, at least some of them. And I think the curated reviews, the small ones, right? Not the small ones, but the ones that are like 1, 2, or 3 per paper that people receive substantial amount of RSC for doing, I think it would go a long way.
Yeah, it's a great point. They are kind of different features, and I actually think you're right. Where like the post-publication version, having it be more casual, makes a lot of sense. Like maybe ResearchHub can help to incentivize like the more hardcore, like actual peer reviews, when the peer-to-peer reviews, for lack of a better term, could be bounties on existing papers. Mm-hmm. Yeah, lots of different things that we'll probably have to like literally experiment with to see what works best. I guess, Nathan?
Yeah, I think part of the solution, I don't know what other people's thoughts are on this, but if we try and make the reviews as transparent as possible, then especially when it comes to post-publication reviews, I think that will solve a lot of the problems. Because if you think about a lot of the critical appraisal aspects of this are quite objective. You're looking at the study design, you're looking at really how rigorous was the methodology, and then you're trying to put the results in the context of already published literature, which can be cited. So other people can look at it and really follow, okay, what is the reasoning behind this person's critical appraisal score or whatever? And there's no reason why someone who isn't an expert on the topic, and by expert, I mean, a renowned professor in the field can't do those aspects. I think where the subjective assessment comes in the current publication industry is when it comes to how interesting is this? Do we want to publish it in NetJam, The Lancet, these sorts of publications? It's very much a subjective assessment of how interesting the paper is. But if we're doing it post-publication, that's not really an issue. That only comes in later on. And especially if that's been outsourced anyway, because it's an open source site, we don't really need to make subjective statements about how interesting it is, because the market will decide that for us.
Totally. Yeah, 100%. It's a great point.
I think that also removes a lot of bias. Like normally you're trying to push your paper, trying to make it, like presumptuous, trying to like make claims that are not like what they actually are. So being at ResearchHub fair in basically giving a judgment on a paper based on like some standardized guidelines, I think could really differentiate us from how peer review is conducted at academic journals. So yeah, I like this idea.
That's it. I never thought of that, Ricardo, but it's a great point. It's like people say like they like McDonald's because no matter what McDonald's you go to, you always get the exact same burger, the same way. And so like there's all this talk about like reviewer number 2 who's like totally disrespectful and like tears your paper up for no reason. And it'd be cool if it was like you knew you were getting the same experience from reviewer 1, 2, 3, no matter what, all the time. And I think we could help to standardize that where it's like you know what you're getting into when you submit to peer review. There's no like black box of like anonymous monstrous human being who comes back and tears you up.
Yeah, and it creates a new value proposition, something that you don't get normally in other places. So if I want to get that, I go to ResearchHub. I don't go anywhere else. I go there.
Mm-hmm. It's a great point. So our plan for this peer review feature, we're going to do a couple more like iterations on this design. So we'll probably bring it back during the next community call and the one after that, just kind of like zeroing in on exactly what we should build. So yeah, if any other ideas come up, feel free to post them in the community chat or just hold them until the next community call, because I'm sure we'll talk about this again in the near future. I guess before we move on, does anybody else have any thoughts or questions on peer review in general? Very cool. So Anton, if it's cool with you, I'll just jump into the next topic because I think that's me anyway.
Sure.
Yeah, so we've been talking a little while about like putting like a minimum contribution on the editor program in order to have basically like here's the absolute minimum that people need to do in order to like continue being a part of the editor program. We were thinking about doing this via a DAO vote, but there's been some like internal discussion on basically like the relationship between ResearchHub Inc. and the community and how that should move forward. So we're still like finalizing those details, but rather than having a DAO vote, we think that this should be something that's like kind of like dictated down from ResearchHub Inc. because we're kind of administering the editor program. So the way we've done this so far is via the basically community leaders. I ran this past them, and this was even done sort of without me there, but the community leaders came up with like a minimum requirement for like participating on a weekly basis in the editor program. And I can share my screen here just to like give more details. But I think Anton might be able to kind of like explain things perfectly. But so the idea is like 3 meaningful posts, right? And a meaningful post per week, 3 meaningful posts per week. And a meaningful post can consist of 2 different things. It's either like a paper plus a quality summary. So here's an example from Nick, who posted this paper, which is a nice like quality paper. There's a method section. It can be replicated in theory. And then added like a great overview of the paper, like a layman's summary, and then also his thoughts kind of like in more scientific terms, which like caused a cool discussion to come out of it. So this is one type of meaningful post, which is a paper and a like quality summary. And then another type of meaningful post is Anton's response here. So this is a paper that I think Anton actually posted too, but someone asked him a question based on his summary, and he responded like in great detail, including like the part of the study that was relevant to help answer the question. So like using figures, like including links, something that like, clearly there's effort put into the response. So these are the 2 examples that we had. I guess, Anton, do you have any more context on like what a meaningful post is and what the intention of this minimum requirement is?
Right. it's difficult to define exactly what meaningful contribution is, but basically the idea is you always want to have the lurking user's mind in your mind, right? So whatever you come up with, it needs to be inviting for the conversation. Think of a user who reads what you write, but has never responded to anyone before, and your goal is to write something that they finally will get them on a hook and they will actually interact with you. So for the summaries, I usually, in my experience, the best one would be where you not only summarize the paper, but maybe pose some unanswered questions or open discussion for other users to get in. Perhaps maybe it's an implication or practical application to the user's life or something like that. And for the comment, just try to be helpful, right? Answer what the other users had in mind, and they perhaps didn't have enough time to dig in or expertise to know what the sources are. Try to connect them to other papers. One other thing that might be very helpful, not sure, could be making links to other papers that are uploaded in ResearchHub, right? Because we want users to travel between different threads and different papers. Yeah, and I guess if there isn't a way for you to insert a figure, do insert a figure, because figures are amazing.
So I guess we can help to answer any questions. I guess Lynn first.
Yeah, just in terms of like what makes a quality like post, I think Anton mentioned like summaries and also like ideas and things that raise questions. In my opinion, the latter seems more important because like most papers have an abstract which kind of already serves as a summary, so it doesn't make sense to me to like spend time rehashing that. To me, it makes more sense to talk more about like what this brings up, like what sticks out from the study, things like that aren't in the abstract or like first couple paragraphs of like the intro.
Yep, 100% agreed. I think some of the best ones so far have been like a lot of papers, not all of them, will have like a summary figure, where it kind of shows what's going on, and you can talk about the context of the paper, and then like actually pull out a figure and be like, hey, here's the moral of the story. So yeah, I could not agree more. Olga?
So I have two questions. Who decides if it's meaningful enough or not? And the examples you showed just now are long. So how do we distinguish between meaningful and just long?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's kind of subjective. We don't have a good answer for this. I think kind of like everybody try your hardest, and like if there are like questionable ones, no. So if there are questionable ones, like I'll talk about, like, people will bring them to me and I'll like think about it, talk about it, with whoever's concerned that maybe it like doesn't qualify as meaningful. And then we'll talk to the editor. So we'll be like, hey, this one's on the borderline. Here's why. Here's what you could do to improve. And like we'll communicate. If it's clear somebody's making an effort, and it's like not there. Like as long as people are making an effort, we'll like get in contact with you and try and help to like get to this like meaningful status. It is very subjective.
Yeah, I think the idea with these was like not really to emphasize like length, but like like referencing like a quality figure in there, or like a reference to another document that could be helpful. So like I think those things more important than like length. I think like the idea was mostly to deter like some of like the one sentence responses that just say, oh, really cool study, I enjoyed this, want to see more, something like that doesn't really bring too much like thought or excess like value to the post. So yeah.
I think Lynn makes a great point though, where this is a cool opportunity to help to continue to differentiate ResearchHub from like Reddit, for instance, or even PubPeer. Like talking about the actual paper, like the details of the paper, like why did the authors choose this methods? Like why, like, are these results because of the statistical analysis? Like actually talking about the paper there's not a lot of that online. And I think that we could become the place where like people are actually talking about what's in the paper.
Oh,
Yes, Edwin?
yeah. I have a question, but it's actually kind of unrelated to what you guys were talking about before.
Totally. Yeah, go for it.
So I noticed when I used, without using a VPN, I can't upload stuff. I wasn't able to upload a paper for probably like a week trying to do that without using a VPN. I was just, yeah, sorry, it's kind of unrelated, but I was just wondering if there's like reason for that, or because I live in Africa, and I'm not sure if that's something that.
I don't think we have any geo blocks up or anything like that. Our lawyers said that we'll have to do it for like North Carolina, that kind of thing eventually. But yeah, I don't think we have any geo blocks up. I know we've just had a lot of issues with the paper upload flow. It's more likely in my mind just bugs that. And thank you for everybody's patience with all that. I think we're like got most of them ironed out and should be updating the paper upload flow better. But yeah, I guess Kobe, do you have any insight? I think it's just bugs. Sorry,
my guess, though, Edwin makes so Edwin, you're telling me that you can upload, but when you get behind the VPN, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's weird. Yeah, we don't have any geo blocks as far as. Do you mind sharing with me the error if you have a moment, like a screenshot or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, I could try to do that. Yeah, not right.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. That will be very helpful.
Yeah, we'll troubleshoot, Edwin. Thank you. I guess Lynn.
Oh, sorry, I wasn't sure what sorry, I just wanted to go back to when we were talking about the minimum requirements. One thing I do like though is I don't like when I like see a paper and there's no comment. So I definitely like, and just like sharing a paper without a comment is essentially not really doing anything. So I definitely do like the idea of like there having to be meaningful comments. But I also think that like non-quote unquote meaningful comments shouldn't necessarily be discouraged either. Like I think like knowing that those don't count towards your meaningful comments, but editors I think should still be like, you know, encouraged to engage in just like chatter about like papers and stuff when like discussion, you know, gets interesting.
Yeah, totally. It's a great point. Like these in theory would just be the minimum to help like, you know, like keep everybody in the editor program. But yeah, on top of that, totally. People should interact as much as possible.
And I think in general, just like posting a paper with nothing should just be discouraged, like as a practice, because I don't know if that really does much. But that's my opinion. I don't know what other people think.
So it's a great point. I think in the editor program, we could put restrictions on that. One reason that we like it is just because it's lower barrier to access for new users to ResearchHub. Like if somebody just wants to share a paper and then go away, they can do that. And then maybe we pull them back with notifications. But yeah, I think moving forward, this is kind of like the editor program again is going to evolve a lot over the next year. So this is kind of like a first step towards like some guardrails around it, and we'll like optimize, you know, a lot over the next like 6 months or so.
Yeah, so the 3 meaningful posts thing. Are you guys assuming that the editors are reading these papers on their own, like, you know, for their research or whatever line of work they're in, and then decide to upload it to ResearchHub? Or are you assuming the editors are actually taking time to do research for this project? Because, you know, if it's the latter, then 3 meaningful posts a week plus like, you know, finding other ways, like finding subject matter experts in the field or trying to promote the project on Twitter, etc. It starts to go above the 3 to 5 hours threshold. And I personally don't have a problem with it, but I know some people might, you know, at least want to have a say in that.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, it makes perfect sense. Like some people's day-to-day lives will, you know, be double dipping when it comes to like what they're doing for their regular work and what they can do for ResearchHub. I think we want like to keep people between 3 to 5 hours. So if you find yourself going over that, that's great feedback. So that way we can, you know, see if people find this to be too much, we'll hope for them to tell us. So that way we can like tweak it and improve it. So if you're like consistently being like, oh man, this is such a pain in the butt, like I'm doing way more than I signed up for, let us know, because we don't want you to do that. You know, we just want the 3 to 5 hours.
I mean, I personally think it's fine, but I'm saying you guys should probably think about that in designing what the minimum requirements are.
I'll add that too. I'll put like a post in the editor's channel. So I'll put something specific under it that says, if you think this is too much, don't hesitate to DM me and we can tweak. Joey?
So I guess like around this, like I know the editor program is one thing in order to like post meaningful comments, but even for myself, do summary, do a mini critical appraisal, do what I do normally for a paper. But the hardest part is just like you don't really get, whether it's like RSC is nice, but you don't get like that the feeling of like that was worth doing. Like people maybe comment like, oh, that was nice, thanks for the summary, but you don't like. I think that's what's missing. I don't know what it is, but it's like you don't want this to do it because it's like a job, right? You want to do it because it's enjoyable, and I don't know why, but I've been doing this for a while, and you don't get that like satisfaction for doing it. And I think that's like what's preventing it from really like growing. Like I can't answer what that is. This is like a really hard question to answer. But I don't know if other people feel like that way.
What it
because it's like you put all this work into this thing, and you don't get.
That's really hard.
It's a great point. Does anybody else want to?
Yeah, it's probably engagement with other people, meaningful conversation. Oh, sorry. I think Patrick is frozen. Anton, want to go ahead?
Sorry about that.
Yeah, I think what Joey says really resonates because I think it does take a lot of time, depending on the paper, to do like some insights. Actually, right now I feel kind of like intimidated. Having to have 3 smart thoughts on 3 different papers per week is not my usual rate. But I think if we just try our best, I think it's probably better to just put things out there and stop the perfectionism at some points, maybe. To get some growth. And I think that's also true. That I think it's like really important that like we get a community and that like probably every editor kind of gets a feeling for it and that it's like fun. And then like I would like the thing that rewards it the most is when other people that I like or respect a lot engage with it, right? I mean, that's the whole point of the discussions, I guess.
Yeah, so it's a great point. And Joey, I totally agree. I don't think we have that like emotional feeling of like satisfaction and like intellectual, stimulation yet. I wonder like what's the best way for us to get there? Is this like we're kind of bootstrapping towards it and in a year hopefully we'll be there? Or maybe should we like try and restructure? I know there's like a voting proposal to restructure the hubs. But should we try and put more editors into one hub so that way it's like easier for people to comment on others' posts and comments? Like what's the solution? How do we get to that like intellectual like satisfaction?
Like
it'll be a hard thing to do, but as quick as possible.
Just to add, I know for me, what's I can tell you like in my experience, it's like when I do it and I get this instant feedback that it's like on that trending list, even though like I don't know what the algorithm is on that trending list. Like it's nice to see like, oh, your thing's on this list. But sometimes when I do it, like you're not on this list or you're not really like anywhere. It's like that's some sort of instant feedback, and it's like that's what I feel is kind of missing. Like you do all this work and there's like no feedback, or you're on this trending list and there's like that instant feedback. I don't know.
A lot of DAOs are doing in their Discord. They'll have like a meeting or like a lecture or something, and then you get these things called tokes, which are basically like a kind of NFT. This is like, I don't know if it's an NFT, it might be fungible, but you get a token basically. I think it's an NFT. It says like, I did this for the DAO. So like I attended this meeting where we talk about how we could grow the DAO or whatever it might be, right? But the idea there being like getting something in your wallet, like a kind of react. I don't know if that's anything close to the kind of reaction that you're talking about, Joey. But if any kind of feedback, that could be one of them. I could say like, especially depending on the stage of the project, and if that changed over time, it could say I was early my contributions. I don't know. This is just a thought. But
Well, something like along these lines, because I think that's definitely one way to go, but we're already kind of rewarding people with Research Coin. I think that it's kind of on us as editors to put in the effort, like responding to comments on our hubs. Like I've actually found, like, I post my research and then I explore some hubs that I'm not too familiar with. And on some papers, I've left comments and gotten like great responses and engaged in conversation. And that's been enjoyable. But sometimes I leave like comments and they just kind of like get ignored. But I think it's on us as editors to kind of like facilitate these discussions, get people really talking, linking more papers. I think that, you know, we want people to really want to do this, to, you know, as Joey said, putting our research out there and then, you know, getting feedback, and also will, you know, do the same to other people. But I think that, you know, it has to be a little bit intrinsic in a way, if we want people to really do this and not just kind of feel like they have to do it. If that makes sense.
I mean, it's a great point. I think like part of our motivation for the editor program is to kind of like kickstart the cold start problem, where like all of a sudden there are people who are there, you know, automatically to respond to your stuff. But yeah, I think once we figure this out, like to get that like intellectual stimulation feeling, I think that's when we'll have product market fit. Like once people feel like they're having fun talking science online. This also, Joey, makes me think of like TikTok. One of the reasons that they're like so good is they do a great job of when you first like share your first TikTok, like they supercharge your post in the algorithm and they make sure it gets engagement. So I think there are things that we could do to try and like help increase the feeling of like, oh, I'm contributing something meaningful here. Yeah, but I think it probably will come mostly in community.
Yeah, if I may say one thing, so we did start working on updating our hot score. So you will, I guess, at some point in the next week, you'll see like some changes to the feed, and as in addition to that, you'll see some updates to the filtering mechanism. So I think that can result in surfacing more of this conversation and just like help reduce some of the confusion about like why the hell some papers get shown up and others don't. Makes no sense. Yeah, but that is one side. And just to echo what Lynn said, like I think we really rely on all the editors here to help us get to a place where you know, there is a lot of active discussions. I don't think we can do it without you guys, without everyone here, that is.
Cool. So I guess Simon next.
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe we are like overthinking this. Like in my experience, like sometimes like the most simple kind of comment are the one that are more like sort of like active and like recruit more people. I think like even for example for me that I'm not like very sort of like knowledgeable in neuroscience, for example, if I see something like a comment that is very complex and deep, I might not have like the sort of like the knowledge to even comment. So maybe like we don't need to put like too much like effort in like the comments, but maybe we should just keep it as simple as possible so you can just attract people from different fields or areas. That would be kind of my personal feedback on how I've been seeing it so far.
I know, Simon, you've done a great job of getting people to interact with your comments too. So I think it's a super valid point. What does everybody else think kind of on that topic, like in the complexity, you know, of these meaningful posts? I guess, Anton, do you have a thought?
We can't talk synchronously because we are in the same room, sorry. Yeah, that was one of my points about long comments. So people don't like reading long things. And I do understand the appeal of like very full overview with graphs and tables. But at the same time, people are less likely to interact with them, I feel like.
Yeah, I personally, and I'm not a scientist or a researcher, but I am active on the site, and sometimes I do also respond to shorter comments, because the longer ones just require me to do a lot of Googling to even understand what the other person is means, which is fine. I think there is room for that too, of course, but just wanted to put my thoughts here that it doesn't have to always be super long to be meaningful.
Yeah, I feel like it should be engaging somehow. So there should be like either a question or some kind of concern raised or some kind of like action or call to action to like think about something or speculate to or apply it to somewhere, something like this, because just overview doesn't do the job by itself.
And so I guess to add more context to these requirements too, like meaningful is a very broad word and we have no idea what that means. And it basically just means like, just to make sure people are trying and putting an effort. So if you're putting an effort and like somebody thinks it's not meaningful, like we'll just talk to you. And if you're putting an effort, you'll say you're putting an effort, and then we'll be like, okay, cool, that makes sense to us. So yeah, it's not like a hardcore requirement that there needs to be like 300 word essay, 11-point font, that kind of thing. But like, yeah, it's just like meaningful as in try to say something interesting, that
Yeah,
could come.
I'm less concerned about this being a requirement for editors and more concerned about do people interact with it. At the same time, coming up with like free, engaging, thought-provoking questions is kind of hard.
Okay, cool. So we're a couple minutes over now. So just to finish out these questions, Anton?
Yeah, I was just wondering, not to seem like a broken record, I think one of the parts why some of the comments might feel barren is because the discoverability is a little bit of a weak point right now. Because like even right now I log in on ResearchHub, and I know there are other editors of the Psychology Hub, and in theory I should have stuff to be entertained with, right? But it's really like I kind of have to dig for it. So there is no offer. Nothing is in my face, and I would like things to be in my face. That that ResearchHub thinks I should read, and I trust ResearchHub to aggregate this for me, and that's I think why TikTok is also successful in that regard. So I would really, I don't know, but this is not exactly an engineering request, right? But I wonder, what kind of actions we can do to make it easier for non-editor users to discover editor.
Anton, actually, I had recommended this, like someone was posting in the research proposal #1 about something, and it made me think of this feature, and I don't know, Kobe, maybe you can give some input about this. Would be something like, I know Coinbase has a thing where it says like, oh, this cryptocurrency is moving, 80% the same as this other cryptocurrency. So maybe something that like an overlap between me and Anton's hubs would be maybe 50% of neuroscience hub users are also active in the psychology hub, or they're very active in this one post in the psychology hub. Here's a recommendation on the right side to say, here's something that you might be excited to see.
Yeah, recommendations is definitely something that's on our radar, and we will tackle it at some point in the next, in the coming year. Don't know when, but we've been talking about it quite a bit, and I think there's a lot of ways to do it. And I like, Jeffrey, your suggestion here about leveraging what Coinbase has done.
You guys are totally right, though, where it's pretty difficult to find good comments. Like you either have to scroll through the live feed forever or just keep on clicking new papers. We're working on changing the filters on the homepage. So we'll have like a most discussed, like within the last day, week, month. And so for each hub, you'd be able to sort by most discussed, of the last day in order to see what people are commenting on, like in a very recent time frame. Do you think that would help to solve the discoverability issue?
Maybe not. In my opinion, the trending page, I guess it's just one part of the puzzle for me personally. I would like to get some assistance when I'm jumping from comment to comment, like when I'm reading one thread, if I'm being offered, a similar thread, perhaps it might be interesting for me. That's just me, I don't know.
Interesting. I think we could do something pretty easily, like most discussed in your hub of choice sent as an email. Not like as part of the UI, but just to ping you via email. But yeah, you're totally right. This needs to be part of the UI eventually. I guess Anton?
Yeah. So maybe one additional idea, maybe to make use of the ELN feature, is for low friction activities to use the blog posts as kind of like not having to do a blog post or writing something up yourself, but creating a curated reading list with like short recommendations. So I think that might be very cool and very well received, because I see it like on GitHub. I already typed the message out in the chat in case I wouldn't speak anymore. So you can maybe check it out. But on GitHub, there's like reading lists sometimes when I'm interested in a topic, and I can see what kind of papers there are. And I think it would be cool to link across ResearchHub then to the uploaded papers. And then one person creates the blog post and he's the curator. And then maybe this blog post is very popular in the future, or like a big curated reading list. So it could have some potential. And then like other people can maybe contribute it, right? Like the kind of like GitHub for research idea.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I think we could even like do this in a very MVP type fashion with our hypothesis feature, because you can, share like a theory or whatever, and then add citations to it. It would be interesting. I know there are a couple projects doing something similar here, like Frontiers In has collections, and then PubPeer also has like a collections feature, which are only kind of being used. So maybe there's like some piece of the puzzle that hasn't been cracked yet. But yeah, it's a great thought. I guess Nathan?
Yeah, I just wanted to offer some practical advice to editors in terms of trying to facilitate engagement on paper posts. So I really liked what Simon and Olga were saying about facilitating non-experts to come and engage, and how they might get put off by the really dense methodological comments and the discussion around that. So I think for editors, you have to sort of cater to both sides. If you're comfortable, you have to try and facilitate that methodological, thorough discussion, because that's what gives the post credibility. But then on the other side, I was thinking about how do you facilitate, casual engagement with the paper. And I think it comes down to always trying to offer that translational aspect to the paper. So as an editor, if you've got even a basic understanding of the topic, you can give some initial thoughts on how what seems like a dense paper can translate to a casual observer. So might not be an expert on a very genomic methodological study, but you could talk about how this might translate to changing gene therapies for heart failure or cancer treatments, etc. And that would be much more of an angle that other people could get involved in and say, oh, that's really exciting, how would it apply to this disease that I've heard about, etc. So I think you always got to think about how you're selling the paper, what's the translational aspect, and even if you're not an expert in the methodology, I think you can do that.
That's a great suggestion. Thank you. Guess, does anybody have any like last thoughts before we sign off for the week?
When do we think we're like?
Well,
how far away are we from the website working like reasonably well? Like, not bugs for a lot of people. Because I don't know, I've kind of, especially over the past couple of weeks, felt hesitant to suggest the websites to new people, just as things were not working consistently enough. Like, I don't really know if that's the question I can ask, but I know you guys brought in the team last time to check and everything. So, like, how far along do we think we are in that process?
Yeah, so this is actually amazing feedback. I very much appreciate you saying that, because that's kind of like the most useful thing that we can hear. If it's like, oh, hey, the website's so buggy that like I don't even want to recommend it to people. Like that's a very big piece of feedback for us. That's helpful and helps us focus our efforts. Yeah, I think a lot of people have reported bugs with the upload flow over the last couple of weeks, and clearly that's like a very integral part of ResearchHub. So we had someone doing an interview working on it for the last week or so, but we've just taken that over internally. So we plan on essentially shipping an update to the upload flow that should be ready within like 2 or 3 weeks. There are like lots of other bugs though. And so Edwin, if you feel like in general, like outside of the upload flow, ResearchHub is too buggy to share, let us know. And we can like suggest during our team sync that we spend more time trying to fix bugs than develop new features in order to get everything snappy and working appropriately. Yeah, so I guess, does anybody else want to second Edwin's thoughts and like put in a vote towards us fixing bugs more so than like developing new features?
Yeah, if you check the chat, a lot of us already have.
Totally.
Yeah, Patrick. Like, if you want, like sometimes I'll try to upload a paper. I think I got a good paper that day, and then I'm like ready to, and I can't even get this paper up. And I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
well, and then
I'm back like
you
a
don't
few
even bother,
days
right?
later.
It's just that kind of feeling. Yeah.
Some days I can't even get the website to load. Like I just can't even get on the site.
That happens often as well.
Yeah, I agree with that. With all of that.
Yeah, this is great feedback.
Yeah, that's very good feedback. Yeah.
I'll report this during our team sync on Tuesday, and we might take another sprint just to kind of like bug fix and clean things up a little bit. But yeah, totally. It's even like if a new person comes to the website and they're sitting for 30 seconds, like while their paper uploads, and like for whatever reason it doesn't work, like I wouldn't come back, you know. So we're probably losing potential growth just on like features not working appropriately. So yeah, thank you, Edwin. I think bringing that up is an important thing, and I'm glad that everybody else like, you know, chipped in to second that, because we can focus on it.
Agree.
Cool. Yeah. Does anybody else have any last minute thoughts before we jump off? Anton?
Yeah, sorry, I know this is putting a lot of pressure, but I'm just curious, like, is it like gonna be soon possible to publish through the ELN, or is like there a timeline, or I don't know, I don't want to I'm just curious and excited a bit.
I think it's on staging right now, so it might actually be like tonight or tomorrow. Kobe, do you know?
Yeah, it should be tonight, maybe tomorrow, but definitely by Wednesday, I would say.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, that's it. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for staying for another couple minutes. This was very helpful.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.
See y'all.
See you.